Hello, everyone, and welcome back to more A Link to the Past Randomizer Team League here on the ALTTPR League channel and Speed Gaming Networks. My name is Worldwide Wimpy. I am joined by tstew14 here on commentary with Antism as our tracker, and we have a very good race set up for us today. We've got the teams I've Got a Tempered, in quotations at the end with the ED, versus the Cool Rush Gamers. Now, both of these teams are in the Village of Outcast division in the Dark World Conference, is the best way to put it, in the Race League. Representing the I've Got a Tempered, we have tstew, who is unfortunately 0-1 in the Race League so far. Was very competitive in his first race versus the Talking Heads. Ended up only being about 4 minutes behind completion. The Cool Rush Gamers also having the same record with 3 points for each team. The Daddy Gamer himself is also 0-1. Facing off against Kern, so we really can't blame him. Kern is one of the best players in the world at this game. So hopefully one of these players will get off the schneid, or perhaps we'll have a really close race with the tie. That'd be excellent.
And while I don't know much about the Daddy Gamers, tstew is a solid player. He just barely didn't make it out of groups in the tournament. He went all the way through the groups, 2-1, then lost 2-1, then lost the final one, 2-1. So 2-1. He was then one win shy of actually, 2-1. He was then one win shy of actually 2-1 chance in brackets in the tournament. So he's a solid player. Brackets in the tournament, so he's a solid player.
So these two teams have off this week so far. Team Gamers, represented by Bum Rush Blitz, who ended up completing their seed in 1 hour 47:53. The losing runner on I've Got a Tempered was Skeeter. He ended up forfeiting that seed as we begin. As we are playing an Ambrosia seed, which has a few different altering settings here. First, you're going to get a hint as to where the where the boots are in the seed.
We got an early map check there. It was a regular crystal in Eastern, a 5-6 in Hera, and 5-6 in Desert and a pendant in Hera.
As I was saying, we've got a hint as to where the boots location was. It's somewhere in the light world. Also, you are sword assured, so our runners are going to be able to slash and dash once they get those boots. Along with that, we have ourselves a standard open to the seed, which means we have to go save the princess from her cell and bring her to Sanctuary. The most compelling part of the Ambrosia is the fact that every single dungeon boss is going to have an actual item on it, not a dungeon item. So no map, no compass, no small key on any of our bosses. As we see our runners go through escape here.
Now, one of the things about Escape is they will be trying to get bombs here because there are 3 chests in the back of Escape, and unless they find the boots or some bombs before they get there, they will not be able to get those 3 items immediately. And so neither runner wants to be in that position because you always assume your opponent was able to get them, and then you could potentially be some useful item behind.
Now, of course, fighter strats, it's a little bit more difficult to get through this escape, but that is exactly what you're meant to do in the vanilla game, so not too tough here. Our runners are going to try and find a bomb drop from our enemies in here. We have the guards, we have some rats, we have the rope, which are the cobras in the backside, so that way they don't have to come back and lift up a stone and get through the backside of Sanctuary to bomb a wall.
Or worse yet, on one of those occasions when the Power Glove is actually sitting in the back of Escape, they would have to go all the way through from the front again to get the Power Glove out of the back. It's rare, but I've seen it happen.
In fact, I was watching a seed earlier today that had the glove back there, so that's real early progression for you that if you have to skip, kind of is not fun.
But both of our runners have rescued Zelda, are heading with her towards the back. One other thing about a standard opening is that you get a free light cone only for getting through the sewers in the back of Escape. For the rest of the game, you still need a lamp if you want a light cone, but for the sewers, we give it to you because otherwise we'd need to put a lamp in one of those first 2 chests.
We see our runners progressing through with our fancy princess, saving her from the cell. So far, no bomb drops. So we'll have to see if the rats or the rope hold that precious, precious explosion.
But yes, you will see our runners taking a lot of slashes at rats and ropes. And the other catch is that sometimes the bombs are buried pretty deep in a prize pack, so you have to get the first 3 prizes off of enemies, and then the bombs will be the 4th, for instance. And of course, not all enemies drop prizes.
There's our first rat slain in the back of Escape. Nothing so far. It looks like DaddyGamers is going to wait for a more congested area to try and see that bomb drop item, maybe. Magic, more roops, full magic.
Yeah, that full magic was nice. I guess tstew already picked it up at some point.
As we find a piece of heart in Darkcross, so no bombs from the chests.
So it looks like, unless some bomb really deep in a prize pack suddenly shows up here, we're gonna have to go back for the back of Escape. tstew's just given up.
It would make sense at this point. Once you kill half dozen of a certain type and you don't find it, it's really not worth their trouble.
So what's Sanctuary gonna give us today?
I hope it's not bombs. It was.
Your hopes were dashed.
Commentator curse aplenty. Now, as we walk our way through Lost Woods, maybe a lumberjack check, or into Kakariko Village, I just want to go over the standings for the Village of Outcasts division. Currently, Fuami will give an interview, is at the top with a total of 12 points out of 12. That means they've won every single race they've been in. Just behind is old Swagger Jackson at 6 out of 6 potential points. OP Get Good, 6 out of 9 points. Yoshi's on skis, I've got a tempered, and Cool Rush coming in right behind at 3 points, along with the Talking Heads. And unfortunately, the Super Salty Dungeoneers are at naught. But everyone in this league is pretty good at this game, so I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, we see a team move up in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, this is only the second week. Anything can still happen.
So as we see what's in our forest checks, more bombs. Did you happen to see what Lumbee was?
No, I missed it, unfortunately.
Well, we may get another look at it since Ambrosia has been putting out a lot of Aga seeds in the race league here. Thank you, chat. It says Lumberjack was just more bombs.
Of course, they always show up a bit too late, but hey, at least our runners won't need to buy them in Kakariko. The issue going into Kakariko is we still don't have 100 rupees for the bottle merchant.
Luckily enough, we do have a lot of bombs here, so they'll be able to fill in any of the rupee gap here with a Blind's Hut and Kakariko Well drop-in.
We sure hope there are enough rupees between those 10 chests.
Well, you
I
get
guess,
30.
yeah, they're right.
You get 30 from Blind's Hut and an additional 20 from the Well. Just enough. And Blind was hoarding more rupes than that as well, having 2 more red rupees in the chests.
But we haven't really found any useful items in chests yet, apart from, you know, to the extent the bombs are useful.
Now, I do want to take the time right now, as we're checking Kakariko Well, to go ahead and let you, the viewers, know that you can follow these racers for putting on an excellent performance of Link to the Past Randomizer. Just hit that exclamation point R, and you will bring up that command and be able to see where their Twitch channels are.
And the bottle merchant is just taking half your money today.
That's what we call a wise investment there.
Though, speaking of bottle, we did find one in Kakariko Well, so we'll be able to check Sick Kid while we're here.
Would be nice to find a flute, so that way you don't have to come back to the village unless you're going to Dark World.
The really crazy seeds are the ones where Hammer and Magic Powder turn up this early, and then you check Magic Bat as well.
As we see the 6th child with 20 rupees, he's going to thank you with some cash for visiting him.
See, I always figured we were just robbing his piggy bank.
I think he's kind. He's like, "Oh, well, thank you for visiting me. Here, have some money." So, Kakariko Village, outside of that Quake Medallion and bottle, really empty.
Was that the mirror in the library?
Yes, it was.
guess we'll be seeing boots in the relatively near future, or at least we hope so.
And this pretty intelligent play here from tstew with so few items in your item pool from Kakariko. Blind pulling race game makes a lot of sense.
And it pays off too, big.
The DaddyGamers doing the same, it makes sense. You've only found 3 items that are unique or anything that could be used for progression. Blind pull it and be nice and safe.
And there were enough rupees in Kakariko that our runners are pretty close to Zora money, so once they do South Shore, they should have that and can just swim right over to Zora.
So we're gonna get a dam check here in a moment from tstew.
Oh, there's the power glove.
That will make going back to escape relatively easy.
Oh yeah, our tracker's asking, and I didn't actually catch this during the opening, did you, where the boots are?
Light World.
Okay, so maybe they will show up pretty soon.
There's 20 more roops. We're just another big 20 away from getting that Zora money.
Yeah, and I think the fact that tstew bothered to pick it up is a pretty good indicator that he's thinking Zora.
Maybe hoping for a lucky rupee drop here from the mini Moldorms or Crab. Seems as though the minis just have some hearts for you today. And a single roop. Not a big deal, though. Did they happen to check what the Bushman was? The Bush Crab.
I'm not sure, but there's the Master Sword, as well as a couple of bottles sitting in Mini Moldorm Cave.
Now, Master Sword is very nice to have so far. It gives you that additional damage, but this early on, you're really now hoping not to find that lamp, because then it might be screaming Agaseed.
Yeah. That probably is what it's screaming if we see the lamp, especially if it's before, like, the Moon Pearl shows up.
We do still have a plethora of checks to make, including this Ice Rod Cave. We do have the flips checks to make, a possible Eastern Palace dip. With the gloves, you can dark up through Death Mountain as we find a tempered sword in Ice Palace.
So we're tempered 14 minutes in. I think there was a seed recently that gave tempered like a minute in, which was just ridiculous, but tempered 14 minutes in.
Yeah, that was 2 days ago. I was actually watching that. Yeah, with the Uncle Assured, there was a sword in the well, and then there was a sword in, I want to say Moldorm Cave, and then another sword in Eastern. So, if you routed it right, you would end up having Butter Sword within the first 15 minutes. Which makes bosses a whole heck of a lot easier.
And meanwhile, both of our runners are putting those early flippers to use, and we will see what Hobo has here. Let's see if the DaddyGamers does the same routing. Looks like it.
Our friend who lives underneath the bridge has for us today a shovel! Well, that puts another possible Light World check into the pool for your boots.
And that could also sort of be routed in with an Agena check, which is not something runners like to do early for the most part if they don't have, like, the book for Desert. But if you're gonna go over to the Grove for to check the shovel, it's not that crazy to go to desert. And wow, there's the Cane of Samaria on Lake Hylia Island. So we're pretty certainly going to be needing that mirror, which is going to require the boots.
Which screams even more that the boots are going to be super early on for our runners to get today, especially with that hit being in Light World.
Wow.
We got a double male in the fairy fountain underneath the waterfall.
Stacking up the swords, stacking up the males.
Unusual that tstew here not filling up all of his bottles with blue goo. They do have 3. That would basically put you nice and safe for pretty much the whole rest of the run. And there are those boots on Zora Ledge.
Well, we did think they were going to be early, so...
So now you can go do your dig spot, go pick up your mirror, head up the light mountain, maybe get a couple checks, maybe dip yourself a Hera if you happen to pick up the hammer or hook shot here. Get yourself some Eastside Death Mountain action.
But in the near term, I'm thinking they'll save and quit to Sanctuary and do Bonk Rocks and Back of Escape before they do anything else.
That makes a whole bunch of sense, and then maybe taking those boots over to Eastern Palace to open up the back of the closet and see maybe if they get lucky and find a bow in Eastern. Lots of options now presented to our runners, a couple of them out of sequence, but relatively easy to get through and really won't break your game too much.
Yeah, with Hera only being a pendant, I don't think they're gonna be in any rush to get up to Hera, though, even once they grab the mirror.
As we see our first real divergence here, the DaddyGamers is going to check the shovel as we find the Moon Pearl in Bonk Rocks. So we're 2/3 of the way from our Dark World access. We need one more glove or a hammer.
Or a lamp to put Aga 1 in logic, and there's our second medallion coming up from that shovel check.
And of course, backside of Skate taunting you with the bombs in the chest.
But that's one of those...
The daddy... go ahead.
It's one of those places you just have to check.
Yeah, the density is right there. It's 3 simple checks real quick. As we get our mirror on the DaddyGamers side. Be interesting to see where you go ahead and try and route this in. As it appears, tstew is heading straight for that shovel spot, going to find that Bombos medallion, going to get themselves their mirror, as it looks as the DaddyGamer is going to go over into Bonk Rocks, get their Moon Pearl, and go ahead and dip back into Sanctuary. A little bit of divergence, but our runners are coming back together with potential spots.
So probably at this point with the save and quits, they're gonna go to Sahasrara and Eastern because that's really the most item-dense location still in Logic.
Just unfortunate that with the Ambrosia Seed, you know there's an item on the boss, and you do not have bow before you have to go in.
Maybe it's sitting in Sahasrara's closet. Ambrosia Seed seem to come in 2 types. Either the Jet Seed that just gives you everything right away, or the really long seed where you have to find progression on pendant bosses.
As we see tstew making their way over to Sahasrara's closet, more than likely doing that Eastern dip. It will be interesting to see if the DaddyGamer decides to maybe make it up the mountain out of sequence. As it appears they are heading over to Eastern as well.
And there's our Dark World access with the hammer in Sahasrara's closet.
Now, save and quit here is a pretty smart play. With that hammer, you do have full Dark World access. It's just not the quickest way to get through Dark World. But that does open up the Village of Outcasts. It opens up a Skullwoods dip. It opens up checking Bumper Cave. It opens up the Graveyard Ledge.
Oh, and tstew's actually going the Village of Outcasts route, which is interesting because most runners do what I think the DaddyGamers is going to do here when they get their Dark World access. First thing they do is check Hype Cave. And with the flippers in the mirror, DaddyGamers is probably going to pop over to Lake Hylia or whatever the dark version of Lake Hylia is and get that Cane of Samaria as well.
Yes, since we do know that Cane of Samaria is on that island, it makes perfect sense to go this way. Also, going through the Village of Outcasts isn't a bad idea either. It is the most dense checks that you can make. You can full clear Thieves Town if you need to. It is a crystal. As we see pendants on Swamp Palace and the green pendant on Ice Palace.
And the other 5-6 was French Vanilla and Misery Mire.
So far, it's just a fire shield inside of Hype Cave, and nothing else much. I'd give that a 1.5 out of 10 hype.
And that might be generous.
As we see our dive into Thieves Town from tstew, a potential 4 progressive items inside, 1 guaranteed to be on the boss. So just 3 up here in the front. We found the small key up in front to start, and the big key. So really, you don't want to see the compass or map, so that way you know you don't have to check that big chest. We do have the hammer to get it, it's just a little bit of a walk to actually go and grab it.
Because everything else has to be routed in anyway. You're going to the attic to bomb the hole, you're going to Blind Cell to get Blind Death.
Yep. As we find a full heart on Stumpy, nothing important here in K45 for the Daddy Gamer. And there's a half magic for tstew here in Thieves Town. The Daddy Gamers is going to head over to the dig game, potential 1 item here.
And then they'll probably save and quit because without the mitts, there's nowhere for them to go from here.
Yeah, interesting they didn't run over to go get the Cane of Samaria, maybe potentially check out what Pod has for them.
Well, without a bow or a fire source, Pod is almost totally out of logic, so that's what they're probably thinking. What's the Daddy Gamers gonna do now?
So really a bust on the South Dark World end outside of that Cane of Samaria. It looks as though the Daddy Gamers is heading right for the Village of Outcast. Or potentially a Death Mountain check.
Nope, Village of Outcasts. But yes, with that hammer, they could do a lot of Death Mountain. It's out of logic without either the lamp or the flute, but still. That never stopped anyone.
Yeah, with the old man in the cave to get yourself up the mountain. It's a super simple dark room once you do know the pattern of walking. It's really usually not a real big sequence break for you to do, but you know, if you happen to find a hook shot or fire rod when you're doing it, all of a sudden that's a game changer. As we're progressing through picking up blind, we find a mushroom next to our blind friend. We know that compass is in the big chest because the last item is going to be on the boss. And I think that's the most interesting part about Ambrosia. It makes you route things a little bit differently as you're just counting up potential checks. It really ensures that your runner or anyone who's trying to do a seed of Ambrosia really knows their dungeon item.
Yeah, you can really tell who's doing the counting by how they route the dungeons. Because some runners do forget that the boss has to have an item, and just kind of force of habit has them do the dungeons the way they normally would.
A little off script here for tstew in this blind fight, but red mail looks like 9 hearts. It's gonna be a breeze.
Hey, you were mentioning an early butter sword. How about that early butter sword?
Well, we're gonna be slicing and dicing through all of these enemies with that butter sword. It's gonna feel real nice getting all these bosses lined up in a row.
Except for Blind, who's 9 hits regardless of what weapon you use.
And if you happen to have either of these runners in your fantasy league for the race league, butter sword kills get you a big old nothing.
Now, the other thing to be aware of with that mushroom, since the runners have access to the Cane of Samaria, they could fake powder if they wanted, but it's probably not top of their minds just because they'd have to go and get the cane and then come back to Kakariko.
Yeah, that would be something you would want to route in with Titan's Mitts and being able to do your Smith checks with it. As tstew is going to pick up their butter sword, going to be super happy. Because everything's better with butter. DaddyGamers picking up that half magic.
So now tstew's gonna continue around, do these south side checks that we know are worthless, but that'll give DaddyGamers time to catch up.
More than likely leading him to the Cane of Samaria, just looking and thinking about possible progression. Logically, in this seed, you do have the pyramid available to you, you have catfish, you do have that pod dip if you want to gamble that. Outside of that, it's just a Gina and really sequence breaking that mountain.
Don't forget Graveyard Ledge. I think DaddyGamers might go there next if he doesn't go to Skullwoods.
That's correct as well. You can dip your Skullwoods for one item, or check that Graveyard Ledge for an additional. We also do have King's Tomb since we do have the mirror. What's nice is knowing that your Cane of Samaria is on Hylia Island and in the Dark World, or through the Dark World. That really only opens up Mire and Turtle Rock for you, and you can put those off until last, so you can just let that sit there for a while.
It does save some statue dragging in Skullwoods and Pod, though.
As tstew hitting up their Hyper Cave, we know it's just an additional shield inside of here. Nothing too much in the way of... Would make sense to go ahead and head south and pick up the Hylia Island Red Cave. Swing yourself over to Pod, maybe do a pyramid check, or possibly save and quit once you do get that Red Cane. With that mushroom, though, it would be interesting if you decided to go up pyramid, turn that in, and do catfish. That's also a possibility. As we see tstew here picking up their Red Cane.
So it looks like all told, tstew's routing was a little bit more efficient because he's been able to do all the same things the DaddyGamers has done, as well as pick up the Red Cane, but it also depends where the DaddyGamers goes next. DaddyGamers also having a bit less trouble with the script and keeps Blind towards the top of the screen.
As we are going to get that pod dip. It is a crystal, but if you happen to find Bow, you can go ahead and mirror and complete it out. If you know the dark rooms for pod, you can also complete it along with Eastern. As
So it
Kiki
looks
the monkey.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, looks like the Daddy Gamers is gonna see what's on Bumper Ledge and then probably check Graveyard Ledge and King's Tomb.
It's a perfectly acceptable play, knowing exactly what's on that bumper ledge should you find them. And if it happens to be progression, you'll be able to head right over there to pick it up.
But it was just a bloopy.
As we see, we were not boat locked today for our pod, so potential of a good density of items here for tstew. You were right there for King's Tomb. Sometimes you always forget that. Oh yeah, I don't need the actual Titan's bits to get into King's Tomb from the light world. I've got that mirror.
Yeah, TDG will probably do it immediately afterwards. Oh! Wow. Or maybe go back and do Skullwoods now.
Yeah, since we get that fire rod here in Graveyard Ledge. And a moth play makes perfect sense. And there we go. We're getting our King's Tomb check. And here's our mimic clip for the right side pod that is bow locked.
So that was the 4th key, and that is the map, so we didn't actually need to come over here.
As TDG is going to head over. Oh, nope, decided not to do that. Seeing that Skullwoods is a full clear with that fire rod, head back.
And since we know that Fire Rod is in Logic, technically the Rupee basement in Pod is in Logic as well, though the Dark Maze is not.
But we are going to see perhaps a hammer jump. Nope. Gonna leave that chest all by itself. We did find the map. I did not notice if we found compass or not. If we find compass, we know that big chest is an item. TDG looking like they are going to go back to front, which makes a whole heck of a lot of sense.
That's a weird glitch. tstew picked up the lamp but did not immediately get a light cone.
I think you have to change rooms.
But that also means that the fire rod was the logical access to there.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's the flute.
I have had a seed where my fire rod was the only torch action with light that I got, with a very, very upsetting lamp on last check-in GT. As we find our 4th bottle here in the Dark Maze, we've got possibly that compass and one more item.
So 4 swords, 4 males, 4 bottles, and 2 males we've all found. And I guess that must have been the compass, and tstew was counting.
As we prepare for a Mothula fight on TDG's end. It should be relatively easy with that red mail. You've got fire rod. You've got that butter sword.
Oh yeah, because we saw 4 items. We saw the flute, the lamp, the bottle, and those bombs.
Yep. As it looks like we're going with an Easter dip here for tstew. Makes perfect sense. You're already in the area. Worth the checks. Unfortunately, you're only going to find 2 here in the front. Unless you happen to find Bo, you're going to have to orphan off the boss.
And Mothula
just a piece of heart on Mothula.
And the same as the first item in Eastern.
So just finding one more check here in Eastern. Hopefully, for tstew's sake, it is a bow. That would mean they could potentially go back into Pod and clear it out. They happen to know the dark rooms. There's the big key. Now, everything is in logic here in the front for Eastern Palace for tstew, since they did pick up that lamp in Pod. And it looks like the second item is going to be in the vanilla big key chest.
And TDG is going to the front of Skullwoods to find whatever the other item is.
Just a small key on the right.
Yeah, there are a lot of keys in Skullwoods. So
Just
Eastern's
some
a
arrows.
bust.
Yep. Not a bad idea to dip both of them together. You did find your flute. You did find a... The question becomes, how quick does tstew head over to Graveyard Ledge?
So that pesky last item in Skullwoods must be in the pinball room here. Oh!
And there's our Titans mitts. So both runners making different plays, coming out a little bit ahead, a little bit more for TDG with those Titans mitts. Now with the mirror and a hammer, technically Death Mountain is still out of sequence for him, but you've got everything you need to full clear through Light World Death Mountain and get Super Bunny Cave and the first check in Hookshot Cave.
Oh, and it looks like tstew is gonna fake powder here, and wow, using medallions to burn down his magic.
Yeah, I would think it would be a little bit faster just to spam that lantern, but...
Oh, he's doing that for all that.
As we turn in a mushroom to the witch, we'll see exactly what's inside for us today.
So
Just
nothing on the
some
mushroom
bomb.
and nothing on the
on
fake
the
powder
battery.
either.
We are going to get our catfish check here from the Daddy Gamer. Probably head down, maybe, to check Pyramid and Dip Pod. Though that might be faster to save and quit from the Light World and kind of work your way up again. As we see tstew heading back into the Dark World from the Dark Village. More than likely going to be doing a Skullwoods dip. More than likely going to be looking for King's Tomb and Graveyard Ledge.
Well, this could potentially send tstew in the wrong direction. If he grabs those mitts and then decides to do mitts checks like the Smith chain, that'll take him away from Graveyard Ledge.
But yeah, and that would be an almost worst-case scenario for you if you're looking for that fire rod to complete Skullwoods. Because that wouldn't be a bad routing choice. You got your Titans. There's a whole bunch with Smith's checks. You've got the full mountain open to you outside of everything in the back of Hookshot Cave.
Right, once you suddenly get Titan's Mitts and... Right, with Flute and Lamp, Death Mountain is very much in logic. I think he's probably going to deprioritize King's Tomb and Graveyard Ledge, and it could be a while before he gets that Fire Rod.
But that does open up the possibility with those Titans and Flute and Mirror to go ahead and route in Mire Desert Palace together, which are both of our red crystals.
Oh, he's running out. Let's see which way he goes. Maybe he will get that Fire Rod. Nope, he's doing the Smith's Chain.
A perfectly acceptable, in-sense, logical play. It's just unfortunately taking you in the opposite direction you want to go for that Fire Rod. As we see a save and quit from TDG, more than likely gonna head up that mountain, I'm assuming. At this point, it makes the most amount of sense to sequence break it. It's just unfortunate we know where that lamp and the flute is to put it into logic.
We still need that bow, though. Oh, wow. And I guess Hammer Pegs was a good play. We're gonna need that for Trinex.
So both of our runners have one type of rod. It just so happens they happen to be the opposite elements. So that is actually a very helpful spot for the Ice Rod if you are tstew.
And we're really getting close to go mode, too. There's a 2/3 chance we can get into Mire, and if we can get into Mire, we can beat it.
And there was our hook shot on Gary Oldman. So the sequence break immediately paying off for the Daddy Gamers.
Oh, is that why we call him Gary? I never put that together until you said it.
Yes, good old Commissioner Gordon. As we see, just a full heart container on Spectacle. We'll see what's inside of the cave. And yeah, we're going to see tstew make that play into Mire and Desert. They're both full clearable.
Yep, Mire's Quake today.
As we find the powder inside of Spectacle Rock. We know that batter is nothing for us today. But getting that and being able to loop that into with the Smith makes some good sense, especially since we've had a mushroom turn-in by the Daddy Gamers.
And it can be very nice when you get to Turtle Rock and GT if you're running low on health.
Nice little bomb jump over the gap saves you about 45-50 seconds from having to dash through some minis and making the climb back up.
Well, except TDG wasn't making the climb back up, he was dropping anyway.
Yeah, with the pendant hair, it makes no sense to go up there unless you absolutely have to do it. And with no book, there's no need to see what's on the tablets.
So depending what's the medallion for Turtle Rock, we could just be bow away from no mode at this point.
As we find nothing here in the bottom of Paradox Cave. We've got 5 more checks here in the middle of it. You know why it's called Paradox Cave, right?
Yes, because you fall to get from lower Paradox to upper Paradox.
Yeah, you Your middle paradox is at the bottom cave is at the top, and the top cave is at the...
Yeah, someone at Nintendo didn't think that through.
Well, I actually put some thought into it, and I'm going, okay, well, it makes sense that entering the bottom, you would then have to climb up to get to the top of it from that cave, and if you think of it like you're going uphill to get to the bottom cave, and the middle cave is actually kind of in a valley, it kind of works out.
I guess so, but TDG just found out that Turtle Rock Medallion is not what the runners wanted to see. It is Ether, so we will need both Ether and a bow for Go mode.
We're getting the first check here in Hookshot Cave, along with the rest, since we did find that hookshot on Gary Oldman. So far, just a bug net and a cache of rupees. And some arrows. As we see our Landmola's fight here from tstew.
Makes you wonder why he bothered with those ice rod shots when they're so easy to finish off with the butter sword, as he realized in the second cycle.
Probably muscle memory. It's very rare that you go into any of these Light World fights with butter. And more than likely, we're going to see that mire clear as well from tstew. Would make perfect sense. You're able to route both of them together. You are completely stacked with armor and swords. Would be very interesting to find a bow here in the mire area.
Well, there are 2 items in Mire, and one of them's on Vitreous, so we'll see if either of those is useful. Otherwise, we might have to start dipping pendant dungeons.
We will have the Pyramid Fairy access after the completion of Mire, so that would be a check you could loop in with the Pyramid. We have yet to see that. So, Bo could just be sitting right there, out for Ganon to see and mocking him the whole time.
That's true. I have seen progression on the Pyramid Ledge last locationed more times than I care to think about.
Yeah, it's out of the way unless you have to do Aga 1. And unless you're routing it up through to do Pod, it's one of those last places you look, unless you get the 2 red crystals. Nice little room to start off Mystery Mire. Those sword beams are just gonna cut through those whiz robes and those squid boys. Or is that just like a pile of worms? You know, I like to think it's like Oogie Boogie, like half opened. As we're getting our Smith checks here from TDG, he's going to find that ice rod and be very happy that he doesn't have to go for a hunt for it.
Which also at that point makes it highly likely that they'll be able to go mode TR, not that go moding TR buys you that much unless you can actually skip Laser Bridge.
So we did find our one item here in Mire in the front. It was a full heart container. Just one big key away from completion for tstew. As we see TDG getting their ice rod here in mere moments. Just a compass. You're going to go back and check the small chest that's just right outside the right side hallway before you go and do that cutscene chest.
And then the joke's on you and it's in the map chest. Oh no, he's going for the map chest.
That makes sense. If it happens to be in that map chest, you could just go right to Vitreous.
And it is.
I have actually seen that a lot in Ambrosia, that key specifically in the map chest. I mean, it makes sense if you're running odds with one less item in the pool because you know for sure Vitreous has an item.
Makes sense. I mean, of course, if you see the small key in the compass chest, then you know that the big key must be in Vanilla location, but
all right,
we didn't see that.
All right, we see TDG going through. I'm pretty sure you check K45, they had the mirror at the time, but going for the chest glitch here, I do think it would have been a little bit faster to go ahead, mirror, flute over, and just walk it over.
Yeah, especially without the book, it's not like you can loop in a bombos check at the same time. Could be force of habit.
Yeah, maybe we've got a big brain and it's a book. It's not, it's a bloomerang. I do want to remind everyone we do have races going on all of the time here with the Link to the Past Randomizer League channel and the Speed Gaming Network. Tomorrow, in fact, we have 12 matches in total. And if C's are averaging 2 hours, that's a full 24 hours of racing.
That is crazy.
And we're not even done with today. We got 2 more matches coming up a little bit later tonight between the Double Dippers and Sphere Affinity. And we're in the world as our gosh dang bombos, but we're buddies. Both of those on Speed Gaming and Speed Gaming 2. As it sounded like we've got a Sanctuary Heart from Vitreous, but we do have that red crystal, which is going to open up that fairy fountain on the pyramid and give us our pyramid check.
Meanwhile, hoo boy, TDG is checking Pendant Swamp. Which, if it turns up a bow or ether, is gonna be of time.
Sometimes you gotta gamble.
And we haven't seen a Gina yet.
Makes perfect sense. That's one of the last Light World locations you would ever check. Specifically if you're not in an Agus. So if this turns up to be Bow or Ether, tstew is going to be in a very nice spot.
Oh, chat's reminding us that TDG never went to Pod, therefore doesn't have the flute.
That's correct. So that's unusual that you would dip a Pendant Swamp Palace before you would dip a Crystal Pod and loop that in with Eastern, because TDG has yet to do Eastern as well. But sometimes you make that gamble, you get that gut feeling, and it ends up paying off, so we'll see what happens.
But TDG is gonna have to go into Pod at some point. That flute is required.
And it's a crystal, so knowing that lamp is there as well, probably putting it off until you find the lamp, but with that fire spent dark room into light. New feat, thanks to 31.
Oh, and tstew is now doing the north side check, so he's going to be getting his fire rod shortly, and unless TDG can turn up either ether or a bow soon, this could be GG.
As we see tstew going into that graveyard ledge, getting their fire rod. More than likely gonna head over into Skull Woods in full and then head up the mountain to get their hook shot and check death. Also looping in a King's Tomb check here with that mirror.
So we're getting the full left side swamp tour. Are these two chests going to give us anything? The first left side chest has money. And I totally missed that second chest. Kind of interesting then that TDG decided to nope out. I'm not really sure what to make of that. And now TDG is dipping pendant ice, so... Brilliant or madman, you pick.
Why not a little bit of both?
Well, there's another cane. tstew having a bit of problem with the moth here, but gets him. And the thing about Ice Palace is after that first chest, you don't see another chest for a long time, so you really have to commit if you want to start getting items out of here.
Well, it is also green pendant, so it makes a little bit of sense if you end up having to dip pod anyway. You could turn in that green pendant when you walk over, especially fully knowing that you are still a medallion short.
Yeah, knowing that Cold Stare has an item, if you can find the second item in here quickly, you can just go mode it to Cold Stare. So tstew's picking up his hook shot, and he'll do the full checks up here. An interesting question is whether he will do Tower of Hera. So what's this next chest gonna get us? A key. And the vanilla big key chest has the vanilla big key. So tstew about to get the bad news that he does not have the Turtle Rock medallion. And TDG is not going to try that bomb jump, is going to take the risk that the second item is here in the big chest and not in Iced Tea Room, but the second item is in Iced Tea Room, and now he'll have to go around if he wants to find out what it is. tstew's doing the Death Mountain checks. TDG is having a bit of trouble with the ice in that switch. I believe those fire rods do a full heart of damage regardless of armor. Oh, and there's the book in Iced Tea Room. Now that could be interesting if we have progression on either tablet. We know it's not necessary for getting into desert because we know where the flute is, but TDG does not know that. But yes, if we can find ether or a bow on one of those tablets, TDG has really lucked out with this ice dip. Otherwise, it's just gonna be a huge time sink. Now, the nice thing about this early Butter Sword is that Cold Stare becomes really easy, and you understand why the vanilla game locks the Butter Sword behind Cold Stare. Get him into the corner, a few slashes, and that's that. So yeah, it all comes down to, does that book or that green pendant get us anything?
And I'm assuming that is where he is going to be heading right after this victory celebration. Just leaving that for last, just unfortunate. It had two of your progression items, specifically one in the flute. Did we happen to get
sorry.
Did we happen to get a Pyramid Fairy check?
No, we did not.
Okay, that's interesting that you would leave that off there. I mean, the mountain makes a lot of sense. Herodip does not.
Yeah, he's skipping right by Hera. So what's... I guess TDG's going for Bombos. I hope he's not going back into Swamp. No, he's going for Bombos. Ooh, and tstew's gonna show a Spike Cave, I think. No. He's going up to Hera?
Very unusual routing from tstew. I mean, we have seen both of our runners now go into pendant dungeons. Only one of them really finding any sort of anything close to progression in that book.
Was that a compass or a piece of heart in the front? That it was too fast for me to tell.
I think it was a compass. I'm trying to think, and you're looking for that orange instead of the red. Well, no, if he goes ahead and tries to make any checks up here in the middle of Hera. As the Daddy Gamer goes and checks Agina, finding that it's nothing. Unfortunately for TDG, we know where that flute's at and is going to be unable to loop together Mire and Desert, as it looks like your first front item of Hera is fire-locked in the basement.
Yeah, leads to that tough decision, especially when you're so close to go mode. Do you spend the minute coffee break to see what that item is?
If you're already dipping, you're already full clearing. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think earlier in the game, runners might skip it. I think this late, this close to go mode, you go for it. And you check Spike Cave while you're up here. Yep, we're gonna get a coffee break on tstew's side.
If you're dipping, you're gonna full clear it. It just makes absolute sense that if you're gonna try and risk it, you may as well go for the biscuit. As TDG finds that heart container on the right-hand side, gonna head straight to the back and kill a Landmolus.
So this seems pretty typical of Ambrosia Seeds, that we got all these items right off the bat, and now we're more than an hour in and still 2 items away from go mode.
Yes, but we are ticking off the list of available checks. The biggest thing is that... Oh, there's the bow in the basement of Hera!
So that unlocks 2 items and 2 crystals. We can get Armos Knights and Helmasaur now.
So we're gonna get a Spike Cave check-in. If this happens to be Ether, we're gonna be in go mode, ladies and gentlemen. As we see the Daddy Gamer working their way through the back of Desert Palace. What do we have in the Spike Cafe? Just a big old red roop. Yeah, no lamp! No need to get so close to the torches.
And we still don't actually know what was in the back of Swamp. For all we know, Ether's sitting there.
That's also extremely possible. But with 2 clearable crystal dungeons available to tstew, that is where I am heading next. Absolutely. Perhaps I would have rotted in that big red bomb with the pyramid before heading over into pod, just simply knocking out checks just to do it. Since you knew you were heading into Dark World anyway.
Yeah, but it's so easy to flute to 5, and there are 2 guaranteed items here. I think then you do Pyramid and Pyramid Ledge if you don't get Ether in these 2 items.
As we make our way through, I was speaking earlier about a potential 12 matches for you to consume tomorrow. The big heavyweight matchup is the Pug Trio versus the Immortals. We got Witty Words versus Junon Ninja. That's at 6:10 Eastern Time over on Speed Gaming Network. We also have Team Kappa versus WJPTBB. Don't ask me what that extra B stands for. It's a typo. That's going to be Gamma Chu versus Willard J. Bradley, another big name in the randomizer community. That one is a little bit later in the evening at 10:40 Eastern Daylight Time. So if you enjoy Rando, please check out the Speed Gaming Network channels and also the network channels associated with the ALTTPR League.
One of the great things about the league is that with 192 runners, we have a whole range of skills here that are able to play against each other. We have runners like Weighty Words, who was the winner of Link to the Past at Speed Gaming Live back in October, and we have some runners who have never broadcast an actual race before.
As we see bombs on the pyramid, and of course you can follow the runners you are consuming right now. Just hit that exclamation point R. It will bring up their Twitch channels, as well as you can follow the commentators and the tracker. The unsung heroes of any of the race leagues are the trackers. Just hit that exclamation point C, and that will bring up our Twitch pages as well. As we see, finally, the Daddy Gamers hitting that pod. Unfortunately, we know where one of the progressive bows is. It's locked in Hera. Hopefully, we'll find it. The second one here on Green Pendant. Unfortunately, it's just a piece of art.
Now, I think at some point, TDG is going to have to go back up Death Mountain because he's going to want to check Ether Tablet, and at that point, he'll check Tower of Hera as well.
As we just find a red boomerang on Helmasaur.
I was going to say, we also still have no clue where that ether is.
Yeah. With Turtle Rock being locked behind that, I would imagine Daddy Gamers is going to last location Hera. It just makes perfect sense to do it that way. It's just unfortunate that you need that bow to complete 2 of your crystal dungeons. If it was just you needed it for Eastern Palace, you'd be a little bit more okay with it. But just that aggravation of having to dip that Hera pendant and knowing it's in the basement that's a little rough.
Yeah, at this point, I would say TDG's best hope for making a comeback here is Vanilla Ether.
As we see tstew progressing through Eastern Palace, already dipped it, so no need to go a long way or open up any chests. Just gotta hit the back and go kill some Armos. Now, as we were saying, this Ether Hunt is going to be a big deal. If tstew decides to hit up all the pendant dungeons, which are in logic, it is extremely possible that Ether Medallion is on the pedestal.
Or it could be in the back of Swamp, which we still haven't seen.
Both of our runners making their way through what is the Eastern dungeons in Link to the Past. We're going to get an Armos fight here as we see the Mimic clip on the other side for TDG. Getting a quick Armos fight setting up in the bottom right. Interesting enough, I had never seen that strategy before. Ooh, Silvers on Armos! That is a bad sign for the Daddy Gamers. That means we have a bow locked behind a bow.
It also means it's impossible not to have silvers for Ganon. So yeah, I think this is where tstew finally does Pyramid, and we get to see what is in and on it.
On it is just some bombs.
Oh,
TDG
right. TDG did that.
So we're gonna see what's inside that very, 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 very special fairy inside Ganon's pyramid. Now from here, if this turns out bust, you're heading straight into the swamp, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a better deal than ice, and I'm trying to think, like, what is left at this point? Back of swamp and pedestal, if it's not in pyramid.
Yeah, that's about it. We've done all of our Smith chain. We've done all of our mirror checks outside of Ether Tablet.
Oh, right. There's the vanilla ether possibility.
Which, if it's the vanilla ether, and TDG loops that in to get the bow, that actually might close this gap a little bit.
Oh, keeping us in suspense.
Just a freebie inside the waterfall, or the pyramid fairy, as TDG gets their freebie from a bottle in a chest. So yeah, your options aren't too good right now for tstew.
So that gives new meaning to freebies, right?
Yes, the freebie for the pyramid fairy was in fact a freebie. Now we know mushroom and catfish do not have our progression. tstew unfortunately does not know that, but it's things that you were in the area. You're kind of down to your last locations anyway.
So TDG is probably going to activate the flute and then do Mire.
Makes complete sense. That is a progressive crystal for you to get that 5/6. Just that evil placement for that second progressive bow. Oof.
Yeah, so the question is, how long is tstew gonna run around?
Yeah, at this point we know that it's either in the back of Swamp Palace or on that pedestal. Fortunately for tstew, he's already full cleared Hera. That's where he found the bow. And you're looking at your options here. Ice Palace is a long way to try and get any items, but you're right here to swim down into the portal and go grab it. It looks like he's gonna flute and go over to Swamp Palace.
Nope, he's going for ice.
Again, a reasonable play to make. It's green pendant, so that's 4 items. Swamp still is 5, but that green pendant's there mocking you, and knowing full well how much I've seen of Ambrosia, there's a lot of progression, a good amount of time on that green pendant. Because
and
if it's
also... Go ahead.
If it's not in the back of Swamp, you've already going, okay, well, I've already checked my green pendant. I'm just going straight to the pedestal, so that does make a little bit of sense.
This also means that tstew will find the book and erase the one advantage TDG has, making it less likely that TDG can come back here.
It's just a question of, when does TDG go up into Hera to get that bow? Chat is wanting perhaps just a ped check. At this point, if you're not finding it in Ice Palace, you're full clearing Swamp Palace as much as you can. And at that point, your pedestal is your last location anyway. It would just be a waste of time to check ped.
Yeah, especially for TDG, who already did the front of Swamp, so there are only 3 more checks in the back of Swamp on the way to Argus anyway.
Yeah, pet is one of those orphan checks. There's no good way to route it in unless you mirror with the book right from the back of Skullwoods. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a hike. And of course, it is a 1 out of, minus all the Ganon checks, like a 187 possibility that you need to pull the pedestal. So in the end, playing the pendant dungeons before you actually pull pedestal, especially an hour and 20 minutes in, you just full clear it and hope you find your progressive item. Now we'll see if TDG goes towards the cutscene room for the chest there, or goes to check the... That's the map chest, right? We discerned that earlier.
Because this is the compass chest that he's about to open, which contains the compass.
Looks like they're going to be heading south to go check the cutscene chest.
Boy, I mean, it's a reasonable play. It's 50-50, but happens to be the wrong play.
Luckily with that fire rod, you're able to kind of push in that tile and hit the torches relatively quickly. It's just getting back to that main arena room is a little difficult from this side. So if you are just joining us, we are an Ether medallion away from opening up Turtle Rock and being in Go mode. We know it's not in Ice Palace, we know it's not in Mire. Logically, it's either in the backside of Swamp Palace or it's on the pedestal, as we have seen just about everything else.
Now, tstew is going to save himself a bit of time over TDG here because he bomb jumped out of Freezor room, so he's going to go straight to Ice Tea, get that book. No, he doesn't need to check the big chest.
As we see the Daddy Gamers picking up their big key here in the map chest. Going to have a relatively easy Vitreous fight. Hopefully, a little low on the hearts, but red mail helps a whole bunch. I did not notice if Daddy Gamers set up Spooky Glitch or not.
I didn't either. I guess we'll have to find out.
Nope, just puts that block down.
You have to for the block. It's in this room where... well, the next room. Or is it this room?
You have to block, you have to red cane cancel, so you have to dash and then put down the red cane.
Oh, okay.
So what you'll see is a lot of runners who are doing Spooky, they'll face south, tap the boots to kick up the dust, and then throw down the block. You can do it from any angle, it's just easier from that down position. In the end, it saves you 20 seconds, maybe? Which, in a close race, is a lot.
And for those of you just joining us, since it seems like another race just ended and some people joined us, the bow is in basement of Pendant Hera. The other bow is on Armos Knight, so you absolutely need to get the one out of Hera basement, and we have no idea where the Ether Medallion is to open TR.
As we see tstew turning in that green pendant, we know it's not our progression, which leaves us with a Swamp Palace dip and or full clear and or a pedestal pull. We have not checked pedestal. since the book was in Ice Palace. So both of our runners got that book late. Looks like we're going to be getting a actual ether tablet check. And if it's the vanilla ether medallion, we're going to be right over to Turtle Rock and in go mode. This is the moment of truth. Let's see.
No.
So, Skullwoods.
You mean Swamp Palace?
Or Swamp Palace, my apologies. Swamp Palace back. Or we have a Ped Seed.
And it's really making me wonder why TDG noped out of the middle of Swamp.
Yeah, with that being full clearable, I mean, Pendant makes sense. If you ended up getting only one dungeon item in the front, you would then say, okay, the likelihood say that it's 50-50, there's another good item in there. If you got no dungeon items in the front of Swamp Palace, then it's like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, I can kill the final boss in it and maybe find another item, but that's a 40% chance that that's even anything decent.
But noping out to go to Pendant Ice, which only has 3 items in it, I mean, and it turns out that book was totally worthless.
Yeah, that's difficult. Especially if you were just planning on going over to another Pendant dungeon when you had the availability of dipping Palace of Darkness as a crystal or Eastern as a crystal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember how many dungeon items there were in the front. I guess we'll find out here. But even if we got none, that's still 1 item on Argus, and 1 more dungeon item somewhere in the back. That's 2 items versus noping out to get 3 in Ice. It just...
As you see, TDG making their climb up Death Mountain again, more than likely going to check that ether tablet, which has nothing, and find themselves the bow in the basement of Hera. So first item is 50 roops in Swamp.
And at this point, I just don't see how TDG comes back, because he still needs to finish Pod and Eastern.
It'd be really difficult. You'd have to see tstew making a lot of mistakes in Ganon's tower, or taking a bad Trinex kill and not taking any safety doors.
With 17 hearts and red mail.
Anything could happen. Okay? Anything.
I mean, several Ganon and Moldorm falls, but it would have to be several of them.
You'd never know. You know, a good break in GT Big Key paired with a Moldorm fall and a failed Ganon fight. Now all of a sudden you cut a couple minutes in, and you're able to get closer and closer. So
okay,
one
so
dungeon item there.
Yeah, and there were 2 dungeon items on left side, but that means that there are 3 dungeon items that TDG didn't find, and yet he decided to nope out instead and get the 3 items in Ice Palace instead.
Yeah, that's yeah, fully knowing that all but one of your possible items you could find in Swamp Palace were in the back, especially since these chests are right here and you know an item is on the boss. That's a tough call. As we see a Moldorm fight.
There's the big key, so tstew will probably backtrack to check the big... No, he's going on and hoping that the big chest has the compass.
I do believe the left side item wasn't anything important, so...
I think it was like rupees and bombs, or maybe arrows and bombs. So there is an item in that big chest, though, because we just saw the compass.
So that's probably why the DaddyGamers noped out. He realized that the backside would have those 2 dungeon items in the big key and either the map or compass, I forget which at this point. Just trying to melt your brain over this logic of where this ether could be.
But the big key could have been locked in its own chest, and that would have made things really fast and 3 quick items.
Yep.
The runners had no way of knowing.
As we see a very quick Argus fight from tstew and the moment of truth. Just 50 rupees. It's either in this Swamp Palace big chest or we have to pull a pedestal.
I can't believe this. This is like last locationing to the max.
As we see TDG get their bow, more than likely over on their side, they're muttering things we cannot repeat on this channel. As they'll head straight over into pod, mirror due eastern, realize that there is no ether medallion. Us, ladies and gentlemen, we got ourselves a pedestal seed with that single arrow in that big chest. We have the greatest of seeds. We had an accident, some science was made, and it was oops all dungeons.
So TDG does make up a little bit of time here just because tstew is going to be checking left side swamp. It's still not going to be enough, but it will be a closer race than it otherwise would have been if the ether medallion had shown up by now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, having that ether on pedestal means you still gotta go into the back of Swamp Palace and kill that Argus boy.
And by the way, we did have an Agaped seed in week 1, so it does get crazier than this. But this is pretty crazy.
And once again, you can follow these very talented runners, even though it is a full dungeon clearing seed. They're only an hour and a half in. That's some good routing decisions, some really good boss fights to really shave into that time. Interesting tstew mirroring out. There was an item over on that right-hand side, but we know it's nothing. You know it's nothing.
tstew grabbed those bombs after the rupees.
Oh, he went right first? Okay. I go left to
He
right.
got them both. I saw that he I can assure you he got both of them.
Okay. Okay. He just ended up going right first.
So here we go. Get that pet hype in chat as we see the bolt coin.
And there we go, at an hour, 35 minutes, and 46 seconds. We have tstew14 in go mode.
To answer chat, DaddyGamers does not know it's a PED seed. He has not checked PED, and he hasn't ruled out everything else yet.
That's just unfortunate. TDG had the opportunity to full clear Argus and Swamp Palace, decided not to, and may have been the thing that sealed his fate.
Because he still has to go in and finish Eastern now before he can even go back to Swamp and finish that off to pull PED, while tstew in go mode is going into Turtle Rock.
With that Ether Medallion activated, we make a very turtly friend's face disappear as stairs emerge as we enter our final dungeon of this seed. Now, I would like to remind all of you, you can follow these very talented runners by hitting that exclamation point R. Give them a follow on Twitch. They are putting on a very good show on this very tough seed. Also, we have Link to the Past randomizer races going on almost constantly during the afternoons and evenings, with 128 total matches per week in this league. That's on average 2 hours per seed. You do the math, that's more than a week of content. We don't know how we fit all this in. We do magically, though.
Yeah, so far this week, every single race has gotten a restream.
And that's thanks to all of the volunteers getting the stream set up, the commentators and the trackers, and of course, our lovely runners. This, of course, is for points in the Village of Outcasts division, which is being led by Farame. We'll give an interview. They have gotten all of their points in every single match that they've played. They were the favorites entering in the division when we started the league. But outside of that, it's kind of a crunch between everyone else. And we're still early on. A lot of time for teams that may have gotten off to a slow start to kind of build up. There are at least 2 teams from every division making the playoffs. So if you just kind of take 3 points every week, you'll put yourself into a good position to make the playoffs. Now, next week's seeds are going to be Enemizer. Just straight boss Enemizer, not rando, correct? Where you can see 3 Trinexes, for example.
Right, it's called full Enemizer, I believe. In any case, right, there's still gonna be 2 Moldorms, 2 Landmos, 2 Armos Knights, 1 Helmasaur, etc. But it's randomized which dungeons they appear in.
The next 2 weeks after that are probably the most intriguing. Week 4 we have... Oh, it's a mystery. Nothing but mystery seeds. No one's going to have any idea what settings are going to be in the seed that you have to complete. Can it be hard enemy damage with very low hearts? Maybe. Could it be open, easy Ganon access? Possibly.
We did tame it down a little bit compared to if you generate a mystery seed. I don't think we're randomizing enemy damage, for instance, and we're guaranteeing at least 3 crystals to get to Ganon, and at least 3 crystals. At least 3 crystals to open GT, at least 3 crystals to damage Ganon. So it's not going to be some sort of 0-0 expert mode fast Ganon.
So at least we have a little bit of standards here in the league when it comes to difficulty. The week after that, though, is the big one. That is Cross Keys Week. And if you are unfamiliar with Cross Keys, oh boy, do we have a treat for you. Imagine if every single dungeon item was also mixed into your potential item pool. Imagine if every single small key that could be in a chest be in your item pool. And that's not all, folks. Imagine if every single door between the light and dark world were randomized. That's what Cross Keys is. It's a nightmare.
And by Cross Keys standards, a Jet Seed is one that lasts under 2 hours.
Yeah, you can find Cross Key seeds that are within that hour 45, hour 50. Most last anywhere between 2:45 and 3.5 hours. If you get a 3.5 hour seed, you're generally okay with it.
But that's a week we're definitely not gonna have all 64 matches restreamed, because when you have to block off that much time for a match, there just aren't enough hours in the week on enough channels with enough comms and trackers free to restream 64 matches of Cross Keys.
Yeah, it's bad on the players. Imagine being a commentator or a tracker on that.
Oh, so this is going to be tstew's 7th crystal, which means we have a little game we'd like to play. Would you like to tell chat about that game?
I certainly will, with the 7th crystal in hand and Ganon Tower imminent. We know that the big key to access the very top of Ganon Tower is in one of 22 possible checks. This is where we ask you, the participating audience, to guess where that big key is. Since we are going off of tstew, the count will start with the first check that he sees. It could be on the bob stand, it could be in the safety room. Who knows? Get your bets in now.
Yes, and I'm sure chat will only be satisfied if it's in Tile Room, because we didn't have Aga in this pet seed.
We did have a Tile Room big key earlier today on the Speed Gaming Network. So if you're at home, count along with us like the count. Our first check is the small key. Second check is also a small key. It looks like we're going hybrid right here, since most players don't decide to do the Ice Armos in with the right-hand side.
Because of that really annoying fire bar room on the narrow bridge you have to go through.
So we see a lot of runners go full left. We see a hybrid mix of going right first and then checking the Dark Magician and then going back right. As we see TDG doing their Argus fight, they're going to get the bad news that, yeah, we got to pull this pedestal in mere moments. As we find nothing in the vanilla compass room.
So we're going on to number 7, which will be the torch.
Let's see if Bob lives or dies. Bob is gonna live! We salute you, Bob.
And TDG just collected his 3rd pendant.
Collecting that 3rd pendant, probably, again, muttering things that we cannot rebroadcast on this channel. I would be, at least. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10. And number 11. Nothing so far. Number 12 is just a cache of rupees.
And TDG finishes with Swamp and realizes it's a ped seed. Maybe we'll see some bombs on that pedestal. What do you think?
I think he's gonna bring the lightning. Number 13, correct? Yeah, because...
Yeah, that was 13. So Rando Room will give us 14 through 17.
I always like guessing that first Rando Room chest. Number 14, 15, 16, and 17. Okay, we've got the Bob chest. We've got 3 chests behind the Ice Armos. And then we have the dreaded Tile Room.
And TDG has found his go mode at about 147.35. Hi, Bob. Wonder why you didn't just powder Bob.
That was number 18.
Oh, he never grabbed the powder. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, powder being inside Spectacle Rock, it's a little bit of a hike to go grab that. As we have chest number 19. In the vanilla big key chest, 19 is our winner for this evening's seed. Congratulations to our winner. Drowsy, you got Yes, with 17.
Not enough people were guessing high numbers, apparently, if I can win with 17 when it's at 19.
It's like the Price is Right. It's whoever's closest without going over.
Well, I looked back at everyone else who guessed high was just going for 22, and I couldn't be that cruel.
As we get our GT climb here for T-Stew. Should be easy with 17 and a half hearts, butter sword, mirror shield, red armor, silvers, half magic, fire rod. You name it, he's got it. As TDG enters into Turtle Rock here. Oof! A fall off the cannon bridge.
But that does let you just charge while you're invincible afterwards.
Nice, easy room here for T-Stew. Getting into the harder rooms of the gauntlet. You've got 3 blue horses here. You're going to have 2 red horses in the next room. And then you're going to have a red Stalfos and a red horse in a completely ice-encased room with a laser boy and a fire spitter. But with those silvers, this should be a quick Landmos 2 fight. Missing the 1 cycle, but just barely.
Oh, missing the 2 cycle as well.
Yeah, those Lambos can be a little tricky to time. And then if you get one that does a short hop, you're just a little bit angry at him.
But T-Stew has a lot of room for error here, though he doesn't know that.
Yeah, in a full all dungeons, you're thinking your opponent is right behind you because you full cleared everything. So you're going over in your head, okay, where could I have done a little bit better to be that much more ahead and more efficient with my routing? And then you just reach the point where it's like, no, I just got a pig to kill. We're good. As we get this first torch room cleared out relatively quick. There's no way he's going to check these chests here with the mini Helmosaurs.
Yeah, with 18 hearts, even if you only have half of them full red mail, you don't particularly need another life.
Would like that magic, though. As we got our Moldy 2 fight. He was heat-seeking, that Moldy boy. Getting the verification chest, an old randomizer tradition. As we're gonna get our first look at a wizard.
We got the geometry wars here.
Just a single in the first rotation, a nice little double setup here. Ooh, and we got a blue ball. Count along at home, chat. Ooh, 2 blue balls.
I mean, single after single will do it. There's a double.
Just wondering if tstew's maybe trying to rush a little bit, knowing that he hasn't quite seen a dot done in the SRL chat. Maybe thinking DaddyGamers is right on his tail or right ahead of him.
But we're going on to Ganon with Butter Sword and Silvers, so even with 3.5 hearts, I mean, he can't take a Ganon hug, but he should be okay.
I do believe he still has a blue goo or a red goo in pocket, so not gonna have to worry about your magic. And using that blue goo early on, you're not gonna really have to worry about your health at this point anymore. Just gonna have to worry about falling off of the ledges once Ganon jumps up in an angry rage.
And watch out for those fire bats.
Unfortunately, taking some hits there pushed him out of being able to only one phase the second phase of Ganon. But we've made it to phase number 3. It should be relatively academic after this point. Just gonna take 4 silver arrows after 1 full slash from the Butter Sword to freeze Ganon and shoot him with that arrow shaft.
And meanwhile, TDG is picking up his 7th crystal and will be heading over to GT.
tstew playing it a little conservatively here, letting Ganon do that first teleport. Oh! That is the last thing tstew wanted to see. Gotta be feeling the pressure now of, oh no, is that what cost me my race? Looking over at that SRL chat, is the dot done there? Where's the dot done? As we see TDG entering their Ganon Tower. I've returned, pig. There's the phase push. 2, 3, 4, 5, and just gotta get one more in there. There we go.
He's not being shy about hitting the pig this time.
So, if you're unfamiliar with race seeds, you do have the same RNG as your opponent, your first attempt in AGA, either of them, or on the Ganon fight. This time, though, you're up to the randomizer, and it's choosing exactly what it is and what it wants to do to you.
Does not get the torch glitch this time.
It's unnecessary with that half magic and fire rod. This should be relatively easy. There we go, good double positioning. Ooh, could have shot. Ooh, there we go. And we have a dead pig. Congratulations to tstew14 on this victory in week 2 of the Link to the Past Randomizer Team League. Getting past the hardest enemy, and with an official time of 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 13 seconds, tstew14 takes those precious 3 points in a very competitive division in the Dark World. And it looks as though the DaddyGamers got the bad news and is forfeiting the rest of the match. Understandable with how kind of evil this seed was.
Yeah, nearly 2 hours in, and especially given we know where the big key is, he would have been going at it for a while yet and then would have had to still climb the tower. I don't blame him.
So it looks as though we might be able to get either of the runners in here. Let me go ahead and ask if they want in. But outside of that, this seed was a bit unforgiving. Especially with that ether on the pedestal. That's a bit tough. Having Bo behind Armos is tough. That's whew. Oh, that hurts just thinking about it. That early pod dip to get that flute and lamp really was a big difference. And then the decision to orphan off the backside of Swamp Palace for TDG. That was the real time sinks, unfortunately. Not bad plays on his behalf, but just logically, the seed had just the worst ahead of us. As we prepare to get one of our runners in here, tstew is going to be joining us momentarily here in the chat for a quick interview. And at this time, I'd like to remind you guys that currently ongoing, we have a race on the Speed Gaming channel, the main channel between the Double Dippers and Spherefinity. On Speed Gaming 2, we have Where in the World is Our Gosh Dang Bombos versus But We're Buddies. Representing in that first race that I mentioned, we have Moogle Charm versus P-Train, and Volrath versus Fantalis on Speed Gaming 2. And as a quick reminder, tomorrow there are going to be 12 races available between the 2 networks of channels. Headlined by Pug Trio versus the Immortals, we have Team Kappa versus WJPTBB. We have early on, if you happen to be in Europe, we have Upstas Vor as Oknish versus Hime. That happens at 11:10 Eastern Daylight Time. And we have Team We're Bad at Team Names versus the Missing Links. Adirondack Rick versus Levan Firestorm. That is right at prime time at 8:10 Eastern Daylight Time. So if you are a big randomizer fan, feel free to check out any of the network channels. We have the schedule up at the alttprleague.com/schedule. You can follow your favorite teams, check the standings, maybe even join us in Discord for a little bit of fantasy if you like playing fantasy sports.
And we are joined now by tstew14, GG.
GG.
So, how about that nearly 2-hour ped seed?
That was something.
Did you like the progressive bow on Armos?
Not really.
You probably didn't like the first one either.
At least I got it the first time up the mountain.
That is very true, and you only went into Swamp Palace once, which was also, a time saver compared to half clearing it and leaving.
So really, honestly, the difficulty in this seed was simply the item location. You guys had early access to a lot of your crystal dungeons. In fact, the two of you had at least 4 crystals within, an hour of the seed starting. We were pretty sure we were going to see a pretty quick seed, and then that ether medallion on the pedestal decided to flip everything on its side.
So how are you feeling at that point? Like, when you were starting to clear pendant dungeons, are you feeling like you're ahead, behind, that the other runner's doing the same things you are and you're probably tied? I mean, what's going through your head as it's dragging out like?
I felt like it was probably close, because we had to full clear pretty much everything. Probably not going to skip much before then. And then when I didn't get it in Left Side Swamp, and the only location left was Ped, so I knew at that point it was just who had better execution to seed.
Speaking of that execution, how much were you afraid that you lost this race on that Ganon bonk?
A bit. Definitely a bit.
I mean, you pulled through.
Now, you guys were able to find an early highest upgrade sword going through Light World that made your trek through all of the dungeons a little bit easier. Have you had any previous experience doing Ambrosia Seeds, and how does that compare to the one you just ran?
I think I've just done a few practice ones before. I don't think any of them were Ped seeds, so they were all quicker.
So with that, just this whole seed in general, we've been seeing a lot of weird placement with the Ambrosia settings. Is it something that you would want to play casually, or hope you get in a race in the future?
Yeah, it's pretty neat for a race, because it helps you know when to skip locations, because there can't be an item there in dungeons.
Yeah, but it also seems like you're more likely to find progression buried pretty deep, is the flip side of it.
And that also locks a lot of items behind pendant dungeons, knowing that the bosses are going to have that item on them. So, going forward in the Race League, how confident do you think you and your teammates are of progressing forward into the playoffs?
I think we have a decent chance. We're 2-2 right now, so we're definitely within range. Could easily make.
I was just looking at the schedule going down. Are you excited to get hopefully a rematch with Korek during co-op week at the end of the season?
Yeah, I am.
Because I remember how that came down to the wire. You almost kept him out of brackets in the main tournament.
Yeah, I lost 2-1 there.
So yeah, I was just noticing that and noticing that, his team is your final week opponent. So that should be interesting. But is there any week in particular you're looking forward to from here on out?
Probably cross keys.
So you're excited for even longer seeds than this one.
Yeah, I've been doing more cross keys recently. So I'm ready for that.
All right.
Well-
Well, thank you very much for your time this evening for the after race interview, tstew. GG on the seed. Good luck going forward with any potential races you have for the rest of the season and to your teammates as well. And also, I'd like to say GG's to the Daddy Gamers for also putting on a good show for us in this seed this evening.
Yeah, and it's only the second week. There are a ton of modes coming up. You can see the links to both of our runners in chat. You definitely want to give them both a follow. It'll be great to watch both of them going forward over the next 5 weeks.
So for our wonderful tracker this evening, Antisim, for my co-commentator, Drowsy1, I have been Worldwide Wimpy, and thank you very much to our audience for joining us for some amazing action here in the Link to the Past Randomizer Team Race League. You all have a wonderful evening.